The weapon meta in New World is up for a major shift if what is currently on the PTR hits the live servers, so let's talk about it. So let's kick things off with the Blunderbus. There are a lot of changes to the Blunderbus, but it's not really solving the whole one-shot meta thing we've got going on right now. It's more so just fine-tuning some of the experiences of using the gun. So we'll get right into it. Adjusted the dodge buffer window for the ADS firing animation to be more consistent with other firing animations. Basically, it's going to fire more like the Musket. It's just going to be more in line with the Musket and what they've done with the bow. So when you're swapping between them, it's not going to be super awkward feeling compared to the other ones. Next up is going to be the Blunderbuss charges now show correctly when firing while obstructed and returns to the normal reticle. You're going to be able to see your pellets, the shots are still going to go off, all those sorts of things. So you're going to be able to keep better track of it. Again, more of like a quality of life, just making things smoother with the Blunderbuss, as we saw with the first point. Fix an issue where the player could become unresponsive if they try to aim and go prone at the same time with the Blunderbuss in hand. Basically the same thing. These are quality of life. These are almost like that one. That's essentially like a bug fix. The Azov bomb fixed the typo and the ability description. Barbs and netting. The abilities, visuals, and description have been updated to make it clear that the debuff being applied is bleeding and not poison. Freedom. This upgrade speed bonus no longer decays over time. Its duration was reduced from 3 seconds to 2 seconds to compensate. So there is actually a decent change there. We'll have to see how it plays out. It's an interesting one. I mean, they changed something, but then they did something else to compensate to try to make it, still kind of more balanced. So with future planning, this passive now triggers per mortar charge shot instead of an activation. Mortar charge fixed an issue where this ability was incrementing the blood offering curse and mutators too many times in a single use. Mortar charge fixed an issue where the VFX from this skill could disappear prematurely. Splitting grenade fixed an issue which caused a desync when moving immediately after using the ability, as you can see it. And as I stated, most of this is just fine tuning. It's just cleaning it up a bit. We're not seeing a drastic change in how the Blunderbuss will actually work. And lastly, splitting grenade fixed an issue where critical hits from this ability would not deal additional damage. So that's going to be somewhat of a buff to that, right? Because if they weren't working correctly with critical hits, you might start to see some extra damage there. But for the most part, it is strictly fine-tuning, cleaning it up, and that's all that's really happening to the Blunderbuss. But moving on to the bow, now that's where things get interesting. In the latest dev update, they said that they were going to be working on the bow because they recognized that it was really an underrepresented weapon. It just didn't live up to the same level as a lot of the other weapons, the magic ones in particular. Well, from what I've seen on the PTR, and it could just be that a lot of people are using the weapon now because they did make major changes and people want to test it out, but it looks pretty good. Now, the bow has always been fun to use, but it just didn't deliver. I like light rolling and then hitting the bow shot and all that. Makes you feel like Legolas, or insert any crazy cool archer there. But it didn't really flow super well all the time, and you got stuck when you tried to come out of shooting a bow. You had to like wait before you could try to dodge. It led to hits, and there was just a bunch of things that made it feel too clunky for what it was, and the drawbacks that it has, such as, at range, you're never going to outdo the Musket because it's hit scan and so on and so forth. So let's just get into the changes. They reduced recovery on basic attacks. This is big. That's what I'm talking about with just making it more fluid. Fixed ability cancels on basic attacks. Same thing, fluid. Getting out of there faster, making it so if you're going to drop out of it, you can just get right into whatever you had planned to do after that. Increase projectile radius on all attacks except penetrating shot. This is huge. This means you're going to hit more of those shots. When you're just on the outline of a character now, you might actually hit that. And with the bow, I really do think that's needed because as somebody who plays a lot of shooting games, whether they're FPSs or TPSs, I'm pretty good at them. Like really, like highest ranks you can get sort of thing, competed and stuff like that. And hitting bow shots is hard. I will tell you, that projectile thing is a different beast. So I think it's gonna be really helpful. It's going to see the bow used way more because it's going to give you a little bit more wiggle room with hitting those shots. Players can now sprint cancel when lowering the weapon. Fluidity, you're gonna hear that a lot with this. It is just making it so you drop your bow after you're aiming in and you can immediately just be going. That's massive. Poison shot, penetrating shot now use the same fire cancel inputs as rain of arrows. Again, consistency, fluidity. Reduced hip fire startup and recovery, and increased move speed while hip firing from 1.65 to 2.25. Same thing. This is going to make you be able to get those shots off faster and come out of them faster. Reduced hip fire multiplier from 0.8 to 0.6, reduced charge shot damage multiplier from 1.7 to 1.5. So you're going to be hitting more shots, and therefore they've kind of lowered the damage. So if you fully charge up that shot, instead of being 1.7 times better, it's going to be 1.5. We'll have to see how that plays out. Again, I've seen a lot of people using the bow and just hitting more of those shots. The damage coming down isn't too big of a deal. Reduced charge time and recovery for charge shots. That is another part of it, right? You're going to be able to do everything more fluid, but you're going to be able to do it more often because of the time it takes to charge that shot. You're going to be able to get more of them off, and therefore they're going to do slightly less damage and the bigger radius. So you're shooting them faster. They're going to hit a target more often, so you bring the damage down slightly. It's a good little balance. We'll have to see once it hits live and people have real builds and things how it plays out. Reduce the power of the bow's aim true passive from 30% to 10%. That one I'm not sure about, because that's definitely a big nerf. So we're going to have to see, like, does that kind of counter the rest? Like, is it going to be even more fun to play the bow because it's more fluid, but it's going to be worse in terms of damage output? We'll have to find out once it goes live. But the bow may be making a big statement if the PTR goes live as is. Hey, since you've made it this far, you're probably enjoying the content a little bit, or you're interested. Well, I post content like this all the time. So while you're here, make sure you click the subscription button, give the video a thumbs up, and at the end, I'll tell you what I want to hear in the comments below. Oh, and check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/Rapier_TV. All right, back to the video. Next up, we're going to talk about the firestaff, which saw a number of changes, both including fixing some desync issues, as well as really changing up meteor shower. So getting right into it, burnout. Fixed an issue which caused a desync when moving immediately after using the ability. There you have it, desync issue addressed. Next up, meteor shower. Increased casting range from 15 meters to 20 meters. Meteor shower increased damage from 20% to 25% of weapon damage. So basically, you're going to be able to have a larger range and increased damage. Whether or not it's still super viable, not sure about. It's one of those ones that I think may be good in certain scenarios and not others. So it's going to be more of a use case, but it's improved no matter what. No matter what, this is a buff to that ability, and I'm sure some people are going to try to test it out and see if they can fit it in to whatever play style of gaming that they're doing. Next up, Judgment of Helios. Increased damage from 25% to 30% weapon damage. Nice buff to that. May get that fit into some more rotations. And lastly, Pillar of Fire. This ability now allows movement during casting animation. We've seen that happen with a couple of things. I know that was brought into play with like some lifestaff stuff recently, and because you're like barely walking when doing it, these sorts of things don't have a massive benefit because you might as well be standing still. But hey, it's still something, so we're going to cover it. Next up, we're going to be covering the Great Axe, which saw Whirlwind get a bit of a buff. So increased base movement speed while spinning from 3 to 3.5. That means spinny boys are going to be able to move around a little bit better, which is exciting. It may actually see that get used a bit in something like arenas or when you're in that group combat. I'm really interested in that. And just that idea of it kind of takes me to, like, you know, Barbarian and Diablo and whatnot. So I don't know, maybe a little bit of nostalgia and hope there. But gusting winds increase speed bonus from 50% to 100%. That's a massive difference. That's going to be really interesting to see. And fix an issue where the upgrade names gusting winds, the speed upgrade, and unending winds, more spins, were swapped. So just clear some things up there. Next up is the Hatchet, and the Hatchet didn't really see anything major change. It was more of just a fix. So Berserking Purge fixed an issue where this upgrade would not properly remove stuns if used too soon after the stun was applied. So again, that's kind of like a lot of these other issues where it's just like something was slightly off and they fine-tuned it, and that's all that happened with the Hatchet, so we'll just move on. Moving on to the Ice Gauntlet. This is another one that saw a pretty big change in the form of the Ice Pylon. But before we get that, we'll start at the top. Ice Storm fixed an issue that caused this ability to go on cooldown when the spell was interrupted during aim mode. Again, just another fix. Now we get to the actual big changes. Ice Pylon saw its damage increase from 50% to 75% of weapon damage. That's a pretty big increase. Next up, Ice Pylon got its health increase from 12% to 20% of player health. That's also pretty massive. So with those things combined, Ice Pylon should be used in a lot of these situations now. Throwing it down in an arena is certainly going to be something that's going to be needing to be focused on by the enemy players. So you toss that sucker down, you put it around the pillar. If they try to run behind it, they got to take it out. It's going to take a shot or two, distract them, slow them down. It's definitely going to see more play now. I think that's a big improvement. And lastly, Ice Shower updated the tooltip for this ability to include the cooldown on the reapplication of the root effect. And now we move on to the lifestaff. Now, there are a lot of changes to healing in general in this, but we're just going to talk about the lifestaff right now. Fix an issue with light attacks canceling heal target when sticky lock is enabled. There have been a lot of issues with targeting and things like that, and it seems like they're trying to adjust some of those issues. As we see, the next one is fix an issue that caused targeted healing to attempt to lock on a target's beyond the range of healing spells. Fine-tuning, cleaned up animations, and fixed missing visuals and sounds when self-healing. So all that's just fixes and things like that. But now we move in some of the other stuff. Targeted heals. These abilities now allow movement while casting. Going back to the firestaff mention, you don't move much. I mean, you're like tiptoeing slowly in a direction. I'm not sure it's really going to change too much. Light's Embrace. This one is big. This one has been a hot topic. Increase cast time to 1 second. A lot of people are arguing that this basically just makes it the same as other abilities and some of the value isn't there anymore and that they should just adjust some. People have suggested that maybe lower the cap that you get from buffs. It's pretty major right now. It has the highest ceiling, so maybe lower that ceiling and give it a flash of, sort of effect. Again, keep it immediate, keep it instantaneous. Light's Embrace reduce bonus healing per buff from 30% to 15%. That's kind of what people were talking about because this is a double hit. They increased the cast time and they lowered the potential ceiling. Some people were like, leave it as that flash heal style and take that to like 5%, and they'd still be okay with it because they want an insta cast, which they don't really have right now. So that's one of the reasons that they want to do that. It is a major change. People are really talking about it in the healing world of New World. So we'll have to see if they decide to go through with it or if they make any additional changes. And now we'll move on to the Musket. So the Musket is another one that didn't see major gameplay changes, but a lot of fixing in terms of whether things weren't working appropriately or if they were worded poorly, and to make the weapon more clear on what things do and things like that. So let's just talk about it. Fixed a bug where impact effects for the Musket may have played even if the server invalidated a client shot. aka you get a hit marker and you didn't actually hit your shot. Hit Your Mark passive updated the description to clarify that this passive only works for standard Musket shots and not for overloaded shots like Power Shot and Powder Burn. So this one doesn't change anything, but now players will know. So it's just a matter of letting people know, like, hey, if you thought something was broken or you whatever, it's more clarified, but it doesn't change anything. Marksman passive. Fix an issue where overloaded shots would not count towards the number of consecutive hits. That's a good one. So when you're building those things up, the consecutive hits up for something else, it's going to help with that. Shooter's stance. Fix an issue where the Musket would fire unintentionally in shooter's stance with a tactical reload passive, just cleaning things up. Sticky bomb. Fixed an issue where the bomb would disappear without detonating when attached to objects that were destroyed. Sticky bomb fixed an issue where the Musket was not being removed from the player's hand for remote clients while holding a sticky bomb. Powder burn. Fixed an issue where attempting to fire powder burn while prone would fire power shot instead. That's an interesting one. Somebody to figure that one out probably felt like really awkward. And then trap cleaned up several visible aspects for better readability and effect matching. Next up, increase the model size of traps in order to make them more visible and to match the size of the trigger volume. Updated animation time to match trap appearance. Adjusted projectile arc and speed to make throwing feel smoother and to make the trap land closer to the reticle position. That last one's nice. It's going to make things more fluid, make it more exact in what you're trying to do. But it's really all of Musket is just fine-tuning, cleaning things up, which is good, which is fine, but you're not going to see any massive differences in how the weapon is used. Now we'll talk about a brief update to the Rapier. So Tondo increased bleed damage from 7% to 10% weapon damage per hit or per tick, and that is a nice buff. It's going to make it more in line with some of the other ticking damage abilities, so that could see some more play, especially in things like Arena. Riposte. Fix an issue where riposte could be triggered by abilities from players that had AoE taunts active. This is just going to clean it up, make it activate off of things that are just more fitting, which I think is going to be totally fine. We're going to move straight into the spear now. Deadly consistency. Fixed an issue where perks that deal extra damage, examples are Keenly Jagged and Chain, could reset the hit count for this passive. Increased hit shape sizes for basic attacks, Skewer, Perforate, and Coup de Grace. Increased homing on Coup de Grace. This is good. It's going to make some of those spear attacks and the desync or the feel of desync kind of more void. Just trying to increase that fluidity, make things feel right and hit correctly. These are all good things. It's going to just kind of tidy up the spear. Moving on to Sword and Shield. Leaping Strike, they fixed an issue where this ability was triggering 2 stacks of the Blood Offering Mutator effect. So it's really just going to impact that, but it's good cleanup. The Void Gauntlet got a bit of a balance as well, with basically making it so your cooldowns aren't going to come back as fast, but your Scream route is now going to be longer. So Refreshing Frailty added a 5-hit cap per attack on cooldown reduction. Refreshing Precision reduced cooldown reduction from 10% to 5%, added a 5-hit cap per attack on cooldown reduction. Void Blade reduced the block stamina damage multiplier from Void Blade's heavy attack from 2.0 to 1.5, and increased Scream route duration from 1 second to 2 seconds. So kind of going back to the old route duration with the 2 seconds, but they're going to make it so you're not getting back these abilities as quickly. And that is kind of, I think, how they're going to try to find that fine balance with the Void Gauntlet, and just have to see how it feels. And finally, the Warhammer. So only one thing is happening with Warhammer, but it's pretty big. Path of Destiny, they fixed an issue where crits were not dealing increased damage. They reduced damage on non-crits from 110% to 100% to account for additional damage from crits. So it's a slight balancing, but if you're getting crits a lot and they're going to be dealing that increased damage, then I think you're still good. This is still a buff in my eyes. I think that this is going to play out as such. So with Path of Destiny and the Leech, that's going to be really, really good. You're going to want to probably test that out and use that, but I reckon it's going to be worth it. So there you have it. Those are the major weapon changes taking place on the PTR right now. Now, these could change before they actually release this in May. However, a lot of the time, stuff hits the PTR and Amazon Game Studios just seems to run with it no matter what happens. I know there's a lot of uproar around some of these changes with the lifestaff, the heavy armor, the decrease to healing, and many of the weapon things that we just talked about here. The bow, some people are saying is too OP. Some people still want it to be buffed. You know, you're never going to make everybody happy, but some of these things are probably going as is. I would be surprised if many of them changed. So I want to know your thoughts. Let me know down in the comments below. What weapons do you think got buffed appropriately? Which do you think are still too weak? What would you like to see changed? Please let me know. And while you're here, make sure you give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more New World content, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.